students, welcome to our chemistry class. In the last class, we completed our chapter. And today we are going to start the next chapter. Chapter name is Separation of Substances. Separation of Substances. This is the fifth chapter in your science textbook and the page number is 35. Now, in this chapter, we are basically dealing with the separation of substances. That means in our daily life and all, we can see different types of substances and they are in sort of mixtures. And we want to separate it. For example, now I am going to tell you some daily life examples that we are doing the separation. That is, we are just making a tea. We are just making a tea, and in this tea we have some tea leaves are there. How I can separate the tea leaves from this tea? I want to separate this tea without the tea leaves to this glass. How I can do this? I can do that with the help of a strainer. Now the question is, what is strainer? That means with the help of this strainer. This thing is familiar to you in your home and the name of this is what? Strainer. With the help of this strainer, I can pour this water or the tea to this and the tea leaf will be remain in this strainer and we can separate this tea and the tea leaves. Tea and the tea leaves using the strainer. You please want to remember this term, strainer. That is the thing we are doing when we are preparing the tea. Here actually takes place a type of separation of this mixture. Mixture means the tea and tea leaves. That is one of the things. Now I am going to say another examples. In a beaker, I have some curd. I want to separate the butter from this curd. I want to separate butter from this curd. How I can separate this? I can separate this using churner. Now the question is, what is this churner? Also you are familiar with this churner and I will show you. This is what? The churner. How we use this? We are just putting it in the curd and we will do like this. So this is what? The churner. The name of this is churner. And also nowadays we can see different types of churners that is using in the machines and all. And also we are doing this churner to separate the butter from curd. Or also we can separate the cream from milk. Cream from milk. The same device we are using here and actually we are doing what? We are continuously rotating it. Here takes place the separation of substances, two different substances. What is? Butter and curd. So here also we are doing a type of separation. Another, a simple example I will show you. We are making an omelette and having number of chili pieces are there. When you are eating this, what you do? You just take off these chilies. You just take off these chilies. Actually, why you are doing this? Because it is having the taste and it will harm you or it will irritate you. So you are just taking these chilies out. Here also what you are doing is the separation. Here also you are doing the separation. And now we are looking another example. In a basket, I have number of mangoes and some guavas are there. Number of mangoes, any number, I don't know what is the number. So it is having number of mangoes and guavas are there present in a basket. How you separate these mangoes and guavas? You just take these mangoes out and the guavas out. That means you are just picking. Here the technique you are using is picking. In this case also, actually we are doing what? The separation of the substances. Here what it is? Mango and guava. Now I am doing that, making the size of the substance little more smaller. That means I am taking 2 beakers. I am taking 2 beakers, and in the first beaker I am taking white beads. I am taking some of the white beads. Now in the second beaker I am selecting some black beads. Now the thing I am doing that, just mixing these two in another beaker. Taking a big beaker and mixing these two. And just shaking it. Now what happens? The black and white beads get mixed together. That means the white and black beads mix together. Now you want to separate this white and black beads. How you can separate this? It is also simple. You will do the picking technique. That means you will pick each and every white and black beads. Now the first case I have only 10 beads. Now I am increasing the number of the beads. That means it is increasing to 20. Now this task is little more difficult. Again I am increasing this 20 to 50. What happens? Again it is getting more complicated to take each and every bead is little more difficult. Now I am increasing this number to 100. What happens? Again it is getting difficult, and when it is getting into 1000, actually it is very difficult and it is not a proper method to separate this white and black beads using picking is very difficult task. That means when the number of the things are getting increased, that is getting more difficult, and also these beads are smaller than this guava and mango. So this is a simple example. Now again I am reducing the size of the particles. That means I am taking a beaker and mixing sand and salt. Sand and salt. It is a mixture. And is it possible to separate using picking? Not at all it is possible, because they are very tiny particles, they are similar in size, and also it is unable to separate by picking, and we have another method to separate this mixture. So you want to understand each and every case we are using separate type of methods to separate this. We have different types of methods. So in this chapter we are going to study which are these separate types of separations. That is the thing we are going to deal in this chapter. First of all, I am giving you an activity, and it is there in the textbook page number 36, table 5.1. Table 5.1. You please want to write this. No need of writing. You can do it in your textbook itself. Table 5.1. And it is actually a match the following table. It contains a column A, column B, and column C. What is there in this column A, B, and C is that here separation process. separation process in A. And in the B, that is purpose of separation. Purpose of separation. And in the C, the thing is that what we do with the separated substance. Separated substance. This is the thing in the column number C. So, you just want to match appropriate B and C to this A. That's the thing you have to do, very simple. Just read it and match the following with your pencil. Don't use pen in your textbook. Hope you completed your work. Now we are going to check your answers. The first is this: separate stones from rice. What is the matching one? Remove impurities and harmful components. Harmful components means when we are eating this stone, it will harm our stomach and it will cause our digestion and all. That's why we are saying it as harmful component. This is the matching one for the separate stone from rice. And which is the C column? Throw away solid component. That means this stone is what? A solid component, and we are meaning it like that. That is the answer for the first one. The second one is this: churning milk to obtain butter. Churning means we are doing it with churner. So the matching one is to separate two different useful components. That means when we are considering this, the milk and butter, both are what? Useful substances we use, and we want to separate the both of the things. That is the answer for the B column. And what about the C? We use both the components. We use both the components. That is the C. And what about the third one? Separate tea leaves. Actually, there is no such harmful things which takes place in this separating of tea leaves, but it is actually a non-useful component. It is not at all useful when we are keeping it in our tea. So we are separating it. This B column is to remove non-useful components. And the C column is what? We throw away impurities. We are calling it as impurities because it is non-useful. This is about our column. If anything have any changes, please correct it. Now the question is, why we are doing this separation? That's the thing we have to think. Why we are doing this separation? We are doing this separation for different reasons. The first reason is this: we want to separate the harmful substances. We talked this in the area that the separation of stones in our rice. The second one is separate non-useful substances. Non-useful means the example is the tea dust. The next one is sometimes we separate to take the substances both are useful. The example is butter and the milk. So both may useful. We separate to use it separately. That means we can use the butter and the milk. So that is about this. That means in each and every case we have different types of properties for the separation. And sometimes the size of the particles may be big. Sometimes it is small. And you can see the particles or the substances may in solid state. It may be in liquid state. It may be in gaseous state. That means each and every type of substance is different. That they are mixtures and we want to separate it, but the type is different. And is it possible to separate all these substances with same type of separation? Actually, it is not possible, and we have different types of separation. Now we are going to discuss each and every type of separation of substances. In your textbook, you have to study 9, 10 type of separations. Very simple. We are going to discuss that. Now the topic name is methods of separation of mixtures. Methods of separation of mixtures. Here we are using different types of methods, and now we are going to study one by one. First of all, we are going to start with an activity, and just take a piece of paper and put some packet of grains. Grain. And when I spread this grain on the paper, I can see that there is having some sort of stones are there, some pieces of grains are there, some gram is there, some pulses are there, some type of things are mixed with this. Now, in which method I will separate that? I will separate this using the method called picking or hand picking. The first method you want to study is hand picking. Hand picking simply means we are just taking out the impurities. That is what hand picking. So in this mixture we are separating stone, husk, broken grain, like all the things we are hand picking. This is the example for using hand picking. Now how we can define this hand picking? That's the thing we have to do, and you want to study the definition for what is hand picking. It is the method of separation. It is the method of separation. It is the method of separation used when the impurities, it is the method of separation used when the impurities are larger. The impurities are larger in size. Somehow the stones may be bigger, or the pieces of grain may smaller. Like there is having a variation in the size of the particles. So when the impurities are larger in size, have change in color, different in types of substances, different in types, and the impurities to be less in quantity, and impurities to be less in quantity. I will explain it. This is a method of separation used when the impurities are larger in size. That is the first thing. It may. We are not saying that all the things have to be happen here. It may happen the size of the things will be bigger, or sometimes it will be smaller. Simply we can say it is having a variation in their size. And have change in the color. Here when the pulses are there, we can see it is having green color and all. So the change in color, when there is having change in color, it will focus very faster and we can handpick easily. Change in color, then different in types, that means we are concentrating in the grain, and if it is having pulses or gram like that, it will okay to hand picking. And there is also one point, impurities to be lesser in quantity. In the first area we just said that when the number of beads are getting increased, the type of separation is getting more and more difficult. The same thing will happen here also. When the number of impurities are getting more and more, that will be getting to difficult. So the first method is hand picking, and we are just picking out the impurities from the mixture. That is about the hand picking, and you want to study the definition. I think it's clear for you. Now we are moving to the next type of separation. Again here we are talking about an activity. The activity is this. After the harvesting, we are having number of stalks. We have number of stalks that is having grain. Stalk means what? We can see in our fields. So how we can separate this grain from the stalks? What is the method? Is it possible to go and pick each and every grain from the stalk? Actually, it is not possible. It is not practical. If we have only one stalk, it is okay. We can do that. But we have hundreds and hundreds of stalks, and how we are doing the separation of this grain and stalk? So, in this, it is not okay with the hand picking. We are going to introduce another method, and that is called threshing. The second method is this threshing. Threshing. What is this threshing? How we can define this? That is the thing. The example is this. We can separate the stalks and the grain. That is the example for the threshing. Now we are going to explain this. It is the process of separation of grain from the stalk. We already said that. And we do it by beating the stalks. Beating the. That means we are just beating. We are beating the stalks and separating the grains. Separating. And here, this is what takes place. In threshing, we are separating the stalks from the grains by beating them continuously. This is about the threshing. So, the definition of threshing, once again I am reading. It is the process of separating grain from the stalk, and we do it by beating the stalk, and grain seeds are getting free. The grain seeds are getting free. That means they are separated. Simply it means like that. And when the stalk is having high quantity, we will do within the machines. We do this process. We use this threshing with the help of machines or bullocks. So this is all about the threshing. Now we are moving to the next type of separation. And again the activity. I am just taking some sand and also some powdered dry leaves. Powdered dry leaves. They are just mixed together. Now the task is to separate this sand and powdered dry leaves. Is it possible to hand pick? I am not talking about big leaves. I just powdered the dry leaves. That means the size of the sand and the powdery leaves are almost same. So the hand picking is not possible. Now the question is it possible to do the threshing? When I am just beating this, is it possible to separate? Not at all possible. Now the question is how we can separate this. For this technique we are calling it as winnowing. We are calling it as winnowing. The thing we are doing in winnowing is very simple. A person is taking a plate which is containing the mixture of sand and the powder of leaves. It is mixture. Now the thing is that first of all the plate is straight. Now I am going to tilt this. I am going to tilt this. Now what happens? This mixture will come down. Now my question is, do both of the things in this mixture will fall at the same position? It will not fall at the same position. The sand will be here and the leaves powder will be little more far. That means they are just falling outside. How they are just moving for some distance? That is because with the help of wind. Now the question is, why this sand is not at all influencing with the wind? That is because having a weight difference between the sand and the powder of leaves. For the powder of leaves it is having less weight than the sand. So we can separate this mixture of sand and powder of leaves using the winnowing. How we can define this? This is the process what we are doing here. That means I am just taking a plate containing this mixture and just tilting, then it will fall down and the sand will be here and the powdered leaves will be little more far. This is the thing we are doing for separating this. Now I am going to define this, and the definition is this. It is the process of separation of mixtures when they are having different weights. I already said that for the sand and the powder of leaves, both the particles having weight is having different. So we are using this when they have different weight. That means this is higher weight and this is lower weight. And we are doing this winnowing with the help of wind, or we are blowing air with the help of wind or blowing air. This is all about the winnowing. Very simple, and you want to remember the example that we are separating the mixture of sand and powder of leaves, or you can also write the mixture of sand and sawdust. Sawdust means the powder from the wood, that is sawdust. This is all about the winnowing. This is our third method, winnowing. We are moving to the next type of separation. Nowadays we can see many people are making cakes. What is the first step of making cake? The first step is that we are taking the flour and making it separate with the impurities there in the flour. How we do that? With the help of a sieve. With the help of a sieve, we are doing that. That means I am just putting the flour in this and sieving. That means this flour will come out through the holes on this, and the stones or the impurities or the particles will be left in this sieve. That is the thing we are doing. And the process is called, here we also doing a certain type of separation, and that type of separation is called sieving. We are doing the process called sieving. This is one of the examples. That means the separation of impurities or separation of stone or something from the flour. Why we are not using the hand picking? Sometimes the particle is more smaller. Sometimes the particle is like the powder of soil, like something. So it is not possible to hand picking. Or when we are giving winnowing, what happens? All the powder will fly. So that is also not possible. The proper method is sieving. And you can also see this in the construction sites. That means we can separate. We are using the sieve separate the sand and the pebbles. Sand, pebbles. Pebbles means the round shaped stones. So in this sand, it is having number of stones, and how we separate this using a sieve. That means we are putting the sand and pebbles in this, and the sand will come out through the holes of this. We know there is having number of tiny holes there in the sieve, and the sand will come out, but the pebbles will be left on the sieve. This is about sieving. And now the question is how we can define this. This is a technique to separate particles of different size. That is the basic thing behavior. That means for the particles of floor, this is very tiny particles, and the left thing is little more bigger than this floor. The similar thing is takes place here. Sand is very tiny and the pebbles are little more bigger. So we are using this sieving to separate the particles which is having different in their size. Different in their size. Different in their size. And we are using a sieve and doing this sieving. We are using a sieve and doing this sieving. And how we are doing this sieving? We just allow the fine particles to come through this sieve. And then the particles will come out through the sieve, and the impurities or the big particles will left on the top of the sieve. This is what happens in sieving. Here also you want to remember the examples and also the definition for this sieving. Now we are going to conclude our class. Today's class we basically deal with the separation of mixtures. We discussed about hand picking, threshing, winnowing and sieving. Also we have different more topics about the separation of mixtures, and we will deal it in our next class. Before that, I just give something to think. That means here we are just sieving the floor. Only the floor, and it is having certain type of impurities. Now the thing I am going to do that, I am mixing the floor with chalk powder. And I want to separate this floor and chalk powder. Both are very tiny particles. And is it possible to separate using this sieve? Obviously it is not possible to separate this floor and chalk powder with the sieve. Now the question is how we can separate this. We can separate by using certain type of methods, and we will discuss it in our next class. And today it's enough, and we will meet in our next class.